Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa aqibatul lil mustaqim wa la rahmana ila dalimin. Salatu wassalam ala rasulina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma Rabbana ya Rabbana taqabbal minna innaka anta sami'un alim. وتوب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت تواب رحيم اللهم آمين ربي العالمين. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, lil ikhwani ikhwati fi din, wassalamu ala mani taba huda lil ikhwani ikhwati fi Africa, Europa, America, Caribbean, wa kulli makan. Halim wa salim bikum on the Rama to my Fulbe community. And today, brothers and sisters, I will continue on talking about the MIYETTI ALLAH and talk about the three prominent groups in it. And I'll go about some of the problems, but also I will delineate the differences between the groups and what we could do. Because in this sense, whatever happens in Senegal, the Fulani person cannot say, I have nothing to do with what's going on in Niger. We're all mixed in. I don't care where the Futafula people are at, we're all lumped in to a group. And we have a campaign of hate that's stretching all the way across West Africa, as we know. And we have hypocrisy going on among our African brothers. And a lot of that is because they fear of our secession, again, ruling basically the Sahel and the Western coastal states. So now we have a big problem. And as you know, we have quite a few groups. So we have bandits, so to speak. We have Mujahideen, fi sabilillah. And then we have some quasi-political groups, like I'll talk about now. And these groups are all growing. And they are growing out of the constant injustices that are looming in the lives of many of the Futafula people across the Sahel and Western coastal states, West Africa as we know it. And so we have a lot of banter going on between a lot of groups who have been enemies to the Fulani people for centuries. And as you heard me talk about the last couple of episodes here, where we have jealousy and then we have fear. And you heard me talk about some of the rogue groups, that's roaming the Sahel region and whatnot, the AQIS, Boko Haram, the Ansaru, and so forth and so on. I talked about that. Yes, we have meetings. Our Western leaders, West Coast leaders, and the Tuba are meeting, talking about those groups. But that's peripheral. The underlying problem to them is the Futafula. And they want the Futafula to be put into check because we have a long history stretching back from the 700s. And we have never been quiet. And we have ruled on and off in West Africa for centuries. And this is a proven fact, and this is history. So I'm talking today about certain things, and I'm going to put this one caption here already. Do the Fulani have the right to self-defense? This is a contention, brothers and sisters, this reminds me like in America. All the other groups, Mexicans, Japanese, Chinese, Asians of all sorts, other Tuba, Arabs, you name it across the board, all seem to have a right to self-defense. But when it comes to, quote unquote, the African Americans inside America, when they form groups, they quickly get arrested and they try to disband those groups as though they don't have any rights to self-defense. The police are killing them. The police are maligning them. They can't get jobs. This is the same thing with our Fulani brothers that's happening in the Sahel. And we have a lot of people talking about, the Fulani are doing this, the Fulani are doing that. But they don't talk about the self-defense, as though we have no right to it. When they kill us, we're not supposed to say nothing. The people kill us and no one's getting arrested. Their actions and inactions has caused the turmoil that we know today in the Sahel. And we've seen the smoldering ashes rising again of the smell of a Fulani jihad, which they are causing. So we have to look at that. And I ask you this, each one of us have to ask, do the Fulani have the right to self-defense? And everything that you read, 99.9%, we find that they only make the articles about the reprisals that has taken place by the Futafula after they have been massacred. And that's not right. And as you can see underneath here, does everyone? Why is they asking us to disband them? MIYETTI ALLAH. They're asking us to disband it, to stop it. But how about the Igbo rights groups, the Yoruba, the Tiv? How about and Christian right groups? They have militias, the ESN. All of these are allowed to flourish all through the land. But the Futafula inside Nigeria in particular and elsewhere cannot seem to have any groups to assist them in their defense. And then everybody's asking, why are the Fulani people are upset? And why are they taken to the AK-47? See, so we have to be fair. As a Muslim, I have to point out what is right and also what is wrong. And you heard me talk the last episode here about the lackluster leadership within the MIYETTI ALLAH, the groups. I talked against the leadership, meaning the weakness of it and the direction that they're taking us. This is what I'm talking about. So now we have to go to the other side. For whatever it's worth, none of us, majority of the Fulani people, do not support any criminal activity. That's just like the United States. In the United States, the Black Americans, African Americans, then you want to call them, don't support criminal activity. So when there's groups that form out of this injustice, we look at it, but then the Tubab ask us to disavow the groups. So they put us in between. So how can we support the Tubab who are killing our brothers? Okay. And then on the same token, we have lukewarm support, and we understand why our Black brothers are fighting, doing what they're doing. Same thing in Nigeria and Niger and all the coastal states and the Sahel. The rank and file Fulani is in between. The governments who are killing, who are discriminating against, doing all kinds of things to us, they ask us to disavow MIYETTI ALLAH. See, this is what is funny. And we can't support the government either because what it's doing. See, so we have this problem, and Malayan people always act the same. Again, back in the United States during slavery. Now, for a long time, over a century or more, there was ruthless killings of African slaves. Ruthless. I mean, some most hideous, barbaric, punishments leveled down on a man you found in the United States. When the Black Africans, slaves, revolted against the Tubab inside the United States, you read articles, they talk about how vicious it was, as though it had no right. Yet they don't talk about what the Tubab had done to the Africans inside America. Burning them at the stake, okay, getting them, hanging them from high trees and burning them to death. killing, raping our women first, and then killing them, throwing our babies into fires, selling children, forcing Africans to mate, then take the children from the woman, okay, and then sell for a price. When the black people erupted, they said we had no right to do it. The same thing now is going on in Nigeria. Same thing's going in Niger. Same thing's going in Burkina Faso and Mali and everywhere across the corridors of the Sahel. We have the same thing. You do something to the Fulani people, they react, and then everybody says, well, you know, hey, you're wrong. So we're supposed to sit there. That we've seen 500 of us killed. We've seen, you know, hundreds of us killed at one time. We've seen 75. We've seen some of our brightest young students killed outright for no reason, driving, going to and from, or killed. We've had educators, Fulani educators, killed for no right because they were Fulani. And again, nobody talks about that. See, and this is, we have to be fair. But I'm going to talk now to get down into this. And I want your opinion on this, you know, inshallah, those who will show up in the past and a few who have showed up now, because this is a critical issue, because it does go to the heart of the matter in the Sahel, because the Sahel is so volatile. Yes, the overthrowing of the governments, but you heard me talk about, we've seen a rise now in these new governments. We've seen a rise of a lot of aggressive acts against the Fulani people across the Sahel. So even though we see new black faces on the TV, we see people, you know, running around in parades, you know, backing them and all this, but the Futafula are still suffering under these new regimes. So that's why I told you, don't be so quick to give these people their honors, because they're still killing your kinfolk there in the Western corridor. They haven't stopped. There's a new report now talking about the same thing. Burkina Faso, the new brother, he's brilliant. Yes, he's brilliant. He showed up in Russia and showed out in the meeting there. He's had other dignitaries. He's talked real good about Africa, but in his backyard, he's still killing Fulani people. As a matter of fact, the reprisals against Fulani under his leadership now has risen 100%. So now we have to, you know, we have to look at these things, brothers and sisters, for what it is. Okay, now, brothers and sisters, there are 3 prominent Fulani advocacy groups. 3. And each one of these groups have its specialty. And for those outside of Africa may not understand who these people are and may not understand what is happening and where they're located. Most are the 2, one are located in Europe, the other 2 in Nigeria. And then we have branches spread out through West Africa. And these groups are, there's a lot written. The European Tuba Press has written about them. And of course, we know, especially in the Central Corridor region, they talk about them a lot. And the talk is normally negative. And so I'm going to cover that, and I'm going to defend why we should have this. Now, we have politicians across the Sahel says that 2 of these groups are nothing more than terrorists. We have those inside Nigeria who are against them, saying they should be disbanded. And so forth and so on. So this is you know, a big issue, brothers and sisters, that you know, that calls for thought and how we should go about this. The first group, MIYETTI ALLAH Qatal Hori. This is a very prominent group inside Nigeria in particular. They have quite a few sympathizers, meaning we have many who have joined them, you know, outside of Nigeria to support them, so to speak. and they are a formidable group advocacy for the Futafula people. Recently, their leader was arrested on terrorism charges because he was galvanizing a militia force in the thousands that they, quote unquote, said they didn't authorize. But I saw clippings now where the same person said he didn't authorize that, was on YouTube authorizing them to have militias. And the militias were being trained to protect and to ferret out and to go after the criminal elements within the Futafula community. We do have some of these militias already in place. The second group is the MIYETTI Allah Cattle Breeders Association. They call MACBAN. This is their name. They operate quite differently in many regards. They have over 100,000 pastores involved in their group, and they have some that are not actually Fulani, but they are supporters. They raise cattle, so forth and so on, and they join this. They have over 100,000 members, and they've been around for quite a long time, and they're a formidable group as well, and they are hated very, very much as our group here. They're not looked kindly upon. And now the government and its apparatuses and other advocacy groups are very angry. And they're after these two groups in particular because they want them disbanded. The other is Tabito Palaco International. And they are centered in Europe. Now, let me say something about that, brothers and sisters. Okay, I have to be honest about this. And you think about the logic behind this. And let me give you an analogy which is not off topic. We have a prominent African sister. Many of you probably know. I don't want to mention her name here. It's not about her. And she's on TV quite a bit. She was involved in the UN some years back, and then she was censored and removed and so forth and so on for her provocative right-on comments. Her comments were right on, but she was removed because the Tuba powers wanted her removed. But yet she still maintains a beautiful plush office in Washington, D.C. And she reserves her comments against others, but not against the United States. Anybody who has an office inside the Tubab's home base, it's going to be spied upon, and it's probably wired to the phone calls are monitored. They probably have wiretaps and everything all through the thing, so they're not free. So there's a lot of times you will not get the truth from them because they have to play the tune to their Tubab host. So they may talk about others, like in this instance, this sister talks a lot about the French, a lot. But she stays clear of the Americans because she has a very plush office in Washington, D.C. See? So if you have something in Washington, D.C., or you have something in Paris, France, or you have in Brexit, England, you're suspect. Bottom line. Two of these three are galvanizing factors for all Fulani across the Sahel. Two of them, which we know. Ayata Khatahori, this is one group that has a lot of followers across the Sahel and well aware of them. MACBAN also is a galvanizing factor across the Sahel as well, even though it's based in Nigeria. Both of them are based in Nigeria, but they have a lot of followers outside, in Europe, in America, in North Africa, in Central Africa, East Africa. They have members everywhere who support them, both of these groups. However, this group here, they have a lot of support and money. Their job is basically to educate the public and the Fulani in particular about our cultural traits, about who we are. And they do it in a beautiful way, in a positive way. They're not political, they're not reactionary, and they're not incendiary. So they're galvanizing in the sense of those who need to learn. But MACBAN and the MIYETTI ALLAH are both groups that are galvanizing. And this scares a lot of people. As you heard me say in many episodes, there's nobody in Africa that can get on the telephone and call for jihad and call for a militia, and thousands will arrive from everywhere. Nobody has this type of reciprocity. Nobody except the Fulani people. And this, again, is part of what we're talking about, why we are hated. Because they see us, we can get on the phone and call our brothers from everywhere and they will show up. Nobody else can do this. Nobody has this type of reciprocity except us. And I'm talking the truth, brothers and sisters. I'm not talking today against anybody. I'm not slamming anybody. I'm not talking against any ethnic group. I'm talking about the Futafula people and what is happening and their advocacy groups. And this is what I'm talking about. But I have to give a historical context to this, which I'm doing now. The three groups all benefit the Futafula communities, which is true. They benefit. They make sure that the Futafula voices are heard and not forgotten. This is where we have a problem today, brothers and sisters. We're being slaughtered and killed. And we have the press suppress that. You'll see the Intercept, prominent online magazine. You'll see Al Jazeera. They will mention some of the things that's happening to the Fulani people, but most others don't. They only write and do telecasts about our reprisals, but they don't tell you that these people here, the Fulani clans and so forth, were beaten, their cattle was taken, and they were slain, and so forth and so on. They won't report that. But when that particular village of herdsmen go to kill some of the Tiv or the Yoruba who did the killing, that's what's reported. But they don't report that when the Yoruba went in to kill the Fulani, they don't report that. And this is where we have the problem. And two of these three groups, again, are involved in redress and justice and combating injustices, which are great against the Fulani people. Very great. The Tabatel Pulaco International concentrates on cultural advancement and promoting culture while enlightening. This is a very important factor that we have that positive. It is positive. And we have to have a group like that. It's very, very important. However, the MACBAN and MIYETTI ALLAH, which garners the most attention, many in Nigeria contend that these two groups to be terrorist entities. This we've been hearing now since about 2014 on. We have government officials making irresponsible remarks, governors and in Nigeria and others, TV stations making provocative statements against the Fulani people and against these groups and calling them terrorists. And anyone differing from this point of view are regarded as terrorist sympathizers and co-conspirators. This is the same thing that was happening in the United States. A Muslim who does something in New York City is the blanket indictment of all the Muslims inside the United States. If you make a comment in support of Muslims, then they will get you and sometimes arrest you and say you're a co-conspirator. Even though you're sitting in California and something that's happened in New York, they'll get you for what's happened there and they say you're a co-conspirator to it. So now what has happened is if you go and talk in support of the Fulani people and advocacy groups to help them, to help guide them and pray for them, they call this act of terror. And what's killing the MIYETTI Allah Huri and the Makban is this. Both are suffering from indecisiveness and direction, and the direction these two respected organizations should go. They don't know. They're being pulled all kind of which ways. And since they have dissension among these two groups, they can't function. They're not strong. Even though they have many thousands of members, but because they do not have the right direction, it's hurting them. Both organizations have ultra wealthy members. Rank and file Fulani, they have hotheads who want more stronger actions against the others. You have mujahideen, you have politicians, and the ulama. All of these belong to these two organizations. And again, they don't make the differences between MIYETTI Allah, these two groups. They don't make the distinction. When they use MIYETTI Allah, they say both groups. Even though maybe a comment is made from one Fulani group, but the other one is blamed for it as well, because most people don't understand that there's differences between the two groups. They don't understand that. So they lump all of them together. No different than the Nigerian Christian groups, the Igbo advocacy groups. All of them have all kinds of people in it. But these groups in particular, when you have wayward individuals and you have thousands and thousands of members, they are asking for these two prominent Fulani groups to corral in their criminal element. And it's not easy to do because they don't have power to do such a thing. This is what's the paradox and the hypocrisy of all of this. On one hand, they tell us we should disband MIYETTI Allah, Huri, and the Makban. We should disband them. But then they turn back around and say, we want you to go to corral in the criminal elements within the Fulani. So you can't have it both ways. You want to cut them off at the knees and take away their influences, but then you ask them to go and try to assist in dealing with the bandits. And then inside the organizations, we have very wealthy Fulani men, businessmen, and so forth and so on. Very, very wealthy. And we have rank and file. And we have some now who are making statements and letters against the most wealthy of our members, saying that they are arrogant, even against other Fulani. There's a lot of dissension going on. This is because of the lack of leadership. See, and this is a problem. And we, as the Fulani people, if we have these groups, we have to get it together in order to be strong. If not, you're going to have all these problems. And we have to have the right leadership. It's not how much money someone has. It's if they are rightfully guided by Subhanahu wa ta'ala. And nobody should be leading any of us as Fulani people under democratic ways and means. Anybody who even spouts that out should be thrown out, because democratic ways and means is the way of the Tubab. And the Tubab's way doesn't help any African. And again, we go back to our past. You heard me say, I ask you now, did Omar Dow use that way? No. How about Usman bin Fodio? No, he did not. How about Idris Oloma? No. Any of these. How about Akbar Baba Sudani, one of our greatest scholars in Africa, period. Did he advocate democracy? It was the exact opposite of that. He would not use the way of the Tubab because he was very acquainted with Subhanahu wa ta'ala's words in Surah Nisa in verse 141 that he says, Subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I will not allow the disbelievers to triumph over the believers. And the tafsir are varied on this and is very in-depth because it's a powerful statement. See? But these groups cannot muster their kinfolk to jihad. Brothers and sisters, now you understand why the Fulani leadership and these groups, the two groups, are being arrested. When our groups call for militia, which is a quasi-jihad driven militias, because they know the Fulani people are Muslims, stout Muslims from the 700s. They know that. So when they get militias, it brings fear to the enemy, because the enemy wants us to stay like sitting ducks. So when they send their miscreants to come to kill us, we have no security forces to protect us, which we don't right now. We've had prominent Fulani leaders belonging to groups, the two groups, who've been kidnapped and killed because we have no security wing to protect. And you heard me say in the last episode, I talked about this issue that the Fulani people should have security apparatus to protect. Because who are you going to ask? The state police? They won't do anything. Huh? Who are you going to ask? The local police? They're not going to do anything either. They're not going to protect you. See? So, and even members of these groups and their Siftars kill Fulani, they're not regarded for, they're not feared. They're not feared. And this is a fact, as I told you before. You know, we have Fulani who are bandits and so forth. So they, yes, everybody's talking about them to disband them because they're ruthless. But it's the organization of MIYETTI ALLAH, Huri, and the Macban who they're actually after. That's what they fear. Because Macban alone has 100,000. That's alone 100,000 under their umbrella. I'm not sure what the MIYETTI ALLAH Huri, what they have as far as membership. I'm not sure. But I know it's well into the thousands, 100,000s. No doubt about that. And outside of Nigeria as well. However, these two groups they can muster. That's why the leader of one of the group here, MIYETTI ALLAH Huri, was arrested because he called for and gathered over 1,000 in a short period of time militia. And he's arrested for terrorism. This is what I'm talking about. And if they call for it, they could have called for even, and we do know that Fulani people have entered into Nigeria, northern Nigeria, from many different African states. Again, we know this. And we know Nigerian officials in particular are well aware of this. And they don't know how to stop it. Macban and MIYETTI ALLAH Huri present a clear and present danger in the minds of too many Nigerians in particular. They are frightened of these two groups. And that's why they're quick to give terror designations, because when they do that, the money comes in from Europe, the IMF, coming from the Americans. They hire a lot of ethnic groups who have scores to settle against the Fulani people, and they're poorly trained and poorly armed, and they kill us outright. All they have to do is keep yelling out terrorism, terrorism, and the money pours in. The enemies of the Fulani want these two groups disbanded, arrested, and placed in terrorism categories. Notwithstanding, the Fulani have the same inalienable rights as do the Yoruba, the Tiv, and the Igbo, the Dogon, the Kapele, all the way across the Wolof, the Mandinka, the Mende. They have the same rights as everyone else. But apparently, it seems across the Sahel, the Fulani people don't seem to have the same rights. We're supposed to sit back and let people kill us. See, this is what we see, and this is what we know. And when we retaliate, they call this terrorism, and it's wrong. We got one person here. How you doing, my dear brother? How you doing? How you doing? I appreciate you showing up today. Greetings. Thank you very much. Salam, my dear brother. Thank you very much for showing up. This brother here has a pretty good podcast. That's his podcast right there. You should check it out, especially those who want different, like different view of Africa history and so forth. Because as you heard me say, you should always support your brothers, and each one of us have something good to offer, and you can learn. And this is what I suggest. Thank you, my dear brother, for telling us that you're doing well. Thank you very much, and I appreciate that. So now, brothers and sisters, this here is what brought the fear inside Nigeria and outside Nigeria. Provocative statements made by the two groups, MIYETTI ALLAH, Futafula, and the Magban. And some have been made in anger because of killings and injustices that's happened to the Fulani people. See, and matter of fact, okay, where is it at here? I don't see it there. Boy, I had it here. Where is it? I put here that one of the statements. Boy, where is it at? These provocative statements. Boy, I don't see it here. Man, where? Boy, that's bad. I had it here. But anyway, there was some statements made approximately 3.5, 4 years ago that frightened a lot of people. And part of this was the MIYETTI ALLAH, Futafula comments that basically Nigeria belongs to the Fulani. And then the second comment that was generated was the Fulani will rule forever. That brought the West in particular and allies to the hypocrites and the Democrats who support the Tubab and their governments. They got together and both began to lament of a comment like that, because those of knowing and education, when they hear comments like that, they know the Fulani jihad from 711 to the 1800s was powerful. And now we start to hear these grumblings again from the Fulani people. And this brings fear to the enemies of the Fulani. No doubt about that. And again, they know that prominent Fulani people can get on the phone, and you can have thousands Fulani coming from the Atlantic and also from the East Coast, from the Red Sea, come here and the western part of Africa and join in that jihad. We know this. And I'll give you another episode, brothers and sisters, about the Mujahideen and the advocacy groups. I won't get more into that right now, but I'm going to ask questions for us to think about. Because I'm going to tell you right now, something has to be done. Our leadership, you heard me say now, I had a schematic and I debated to show the schematic what we should do. And I debated, so I didn't show it, but I'm going to show it. Not today, in another episode. This, again, because I'm an outsider, meaning I'm Fulani, me Pulo. But I'm not sitting in Nigeria. So maybe the view I see is a little differently because I'm outside of Nigeria. But that doesn't dissolve me of not feeling for the Futafula people who are suffering. But also criticizing, see, as well. These groups that killed the Fulani without right and target Fulani just because that he's Fulani MIYETTI ALLAH, in their mind, should not defend nor advocate for their own people. This is hypocrisy, brothers and sisters. The human nature of in our history as human beings, when you have went after a group unjustly, they've retaliated. You notice that it doesn't matter of the color. But why is it when the groups attack the Fulani people, we're not supposed to say anything? When they steal all our cattle and they kill the people in the savannah region and they take the cattle, and then we are not supposed to say anything about it. We're not supposed to advocate for the justice. We're not supposed to go to police and ask them to solve the murder and try to return us our cattle. When we do that, they claim this is part of terrorism. And it's wrong. Here, the discrepancies coming from the traditional African brothers who fear the rise of the Fulani Jihad and the ultimate takeover of the middle corridor of the Sahel. Again, brothers and sisters, there is no doubt in my mind. There's no doubt, if under the right direction and the galvanizing forces of the Fulani people in this right context, we could rise to power, but not in the sense that people are fearing. I'm not talking about like killing and all this other stuff. I'm not talking that way. Because we should not kill our African brothers. Now, if you're in a position where they come to your village to kill you, you have the right to kill back, because you should protect, you have a right as a Muslim. Even if there's Muslims trying to kill you, you have a right to protect yourself, your property, and your kinfolk. And if a band of thugs come in and they're tiv with guns and stuff and machetes, and they're ready and you know, and everything else with big knives and swords, you have a right to protect yourself. I don't care what the government says. You have a human right to protect yourself and your family and your village. And so you defend yourselves. The enemies of the Futafula across the Sahel echo the sentiments that the Fulani do not control the Sahel, because they hear comments that I talked about. They said the Fulani, you know, that Nigeria belongs to the Fulani and the Fulani will rule forever. These comments shouldn't have been made, but they were made in a time of anger. We understand that because things are happening and we all make mistakes. I don't care who you are, and we make mistakes. Unfortunately for the Fulani people, they don't have the right to make mistakes because they fear that something, a reprisal will happen based upon the words. But we know that we have been in control of this region since the 700s, on and off. And I had a brother weeks back told me, he went around me about this. I started giving him all the Fulani sultanates and emirates. He didn't write me back. And those emirates stretched back all the way back from the 700s, even when they were small, and some teamed up with the Amazigh people. Others teamed up with Amazigh and with the Arabs, okay, and other like Sinike and Wolof and whatnot, and you know, and got together and formed groups. Some formed groups with the Songhay people, and so forth and so on. But they have been going across the Sahel all the way to the western part of Chad for centuries, See, so when I gave him that information, I didn't hear back from him because he was very angry with me, very angry. And he's saying, you know, because he wasn't, I won't give his name, I don't need to give that. He had his right to his opinion, but he was not Fulani. He said, you know, he told me I was wrong. He said, there's no such thing as that. The Fulani people never had control, especially anything in Nigeria. They only controlled some parts. They didn't control all of West Africa in the sense that every person was under its rule. No, but they controlled everything. What I mean by that is when you control the trade routes, what does that mean? That means those people who are sitting in, say, in the southern part of Nigeria, they have to go to make trade. They had to go through the Fulani sultanates to do it. Now, you tell me, is that control or not? I tried to explain that to him. He said, oh, no, we're talking about Fulani coming down and govern all this. They didn't have to govern everybody. But in the same token, if you tried to go to the north, you had to go through the Fulani sultanates to do it. And if you wanted to trade, you had to go through these sultanates to do it. See? So this is what I was talking about. The two MIYETTI Allah groups are not the same. They're different advocacy groups, as are Mujahideen groups. They are present throughout the Sahel. We have differences. And yet our enemy says that they cannot distinguish between any of us. The bandits who do something, kidnap, rob, they kill even other Fulani. They've killed some leadership in MIYETTI Allah groups. They said they can't tell the difference between them and me. Even though me and maybe some ulama, we're not killing anybody. But yet still, that's where this co-conspirator comes in, where they come after us and say that if the bandits are Fulani and they kill, that means everybody in MIYETTI Allah Huri involved in it. They're part of it, especially if they find out that one of the people who are bandits is belonging to the group. Then they come and say that we knew about it, we organized it, we helped it, we funded, and that's why they're doing what they're doing, when in fact it's not. Because you cannot control thousands and thousands of members. MAC band alone has over 100,000. How can they control all? They cannot. So if one goes derelict and rogue and he decides to kill, how can you go after leadership and tell the MAC band, hey, you're responsible because Yahya just did this down in Abuja. Ahmed just did this over here in Niger, and hold us responsible for that. It's wrong. And I go another step further. When the Yoruba go to kill, do we blame the Yoruba advocacy groups for it? No, we do not. When the Christians come to hack up Fulani people and steal their cattle, or they kill their cattle and their kinfolk, we don't blame all Christians for it. So why is it that the Christians, the Yoruba, the Tiv, well, why they blame all of us if we have some miscreants who do something, they come after all of us and say all of us are involved in it. It's a double standard. It's not right. Brothers and sisters, this here, you heard me talk for 6 months. I gave you examples how our brothers handled this system of grazing rights, waterways, and farmers' rights. We had in place systems that were beautiful. They were beautiful, and they worked, and they were disbanded because the Tubab came in and began to rule us, and then the Tubab left us with democratic ways and means, nothing but a front, and it doesn't work even today. It still doesn't work. And yet they disbanded and they created laws that are not just. Inept anti-grazing laws and government misconduct across the Sahel led to the crisis we have today. And it's true. These injustices have increased the membership of the three major Futafula groups. These advocacy groups are gaining members. And some of the ranks are growing more hostile. Some are in these groups, and yet they are part of the Mujahideen groups, which I'll get into in another segment. But the membership is increasing, not only in Nigeria, not only in Niger, but across. Because as we have worldwide media now, the Fulani people are starting to see what's happening, and they start to lend their support. This is why this situation is becoming incendiary. In the mix are the Tubab powers who feed and fatten our leaders with their money and evil intentions. They come in with a playbook, brothers and sisters, that is absolutely cruel. And they ask for the security forces to kill the Fulani people outright, which they have done. 500 here, 300, 200, 700 over here, 50 over here in Burkina Faso alone. Massacre of Fulani people in Mali. Massacre of Fulani people in Niger. Other misguidance is in 50, 25 slaughtered in Nigeria. Okay. Mass arrest of Nigeria, Fulani people in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. This is what I'm talking about. And who's behind that? It's the Tubab. The Tubab has his programs. And Tubab concentrates on legitimate, strong, devout Muslims. He nurtures the criminal elements in all these countries. He feeds them with money, fattens the wallet of many of the leaders in Africa, North Africa, all the way across. As long as they do what they tell them to do, they say, look, we want you to go after these Muslims and I'll fatten your wallets. And they've done that. They pour in millions over terrorism. As long as they're killing and going after strong Muslims, this is how these leaders get fat. Villas all over the place, villas in Europe, bank accounts inside the United States, some offshore accounts in the Bahamas, all this kind of stuff, do from the Tubab, because the Tubab is given order, I want you to do this, and they do it. And I said in the past, the Tubab is well aware of our history. He is more aware of our history than most Fulani people are, and most Africans, because the Tubab studies, and he tries to figure out ways to divide. And his MO is to divide us and to keep us impoverished and keep us concentrating on one another while he steals the resources, while he maintains control. He rigs the elections to put the people they want in there, because they're the ones who do their bidding for them. The vital threat to their control of reign in the region, and that these three-headed axis of hypocrites, the African leaders and their apparatus, and the Tubab apparatuses, and the misguided rank and file Africans, this axis is great. This is how we are being controlled today in Africa in general, but we're talking about West Africa. This combination here, the hypocrites who do what the Tubab tells them to do, they kill, they rob, they do anything, rig elections, kidnap, do anything the Tubab is, because the Tubab wants to stay in power. And these particular apparatuses join together in order to suppress the population. And it's hurting us. But now we're starting to see, as coups take place, we're starting to have leaders, okay, that are not part of this, but yet still they're still allowing for people to come after the Fulani people. That's the part we have to figure out. They have fueled those three, this axis, brothers and sisters, are the catalyst to the new smoldering Fulani jihad, directed at the three aforementioned adversaries. And brothers and sisters, this is the game of death that we know in the Sahel. This is the game, this is the real game of death. Because the hypocrites and the leaders and their apparatuses and the Tubab apparatuses and misguided rank and file Africans, like in the AU, are the catalyst to the Mujahideen groups. See, anytime you have major injustices, especially when you do this against strong, devout Muslims, you're going to have an incendiary reaction to your hostilities towards them. When the Americans promoted their terrorism program and funded the Sahel, the West African coast, and Africa and period with all this terrorism money, they told the governments to do this against the Muslims. They told them to do all these types of things. And now we have, as you heard me say, approximately 25, some say there's 30 now. 30, between 25 to 30 African states are under some sort of incendiary jihad because of the tutelage of the Tubab who orchestrates against us. They sit back and let this generate. And essentially, Africans killing other Africans. But now this fire has grown so big, they can't quell it anymore. So they don't know how to stop it. But they know that if Mujahideen groups begin to take over these governments, their reign of power is over. And we starting to see Chad's throwing Americans out. We know Niger is doing it. Okay, we know Senegal is talking about that. There's others now, there's grumblings who they want them out. Nigeria said they will not let them have their bases inside Nigeria. It's starting to happen. Their grip is starting to lessen now. And they're acting like wounded animals. The Secretary of Defense, who's a black man, okay, and I'll leave it at that. He was talking about their emergency of trying to secure the West African coast. What does that mean? Meaning that the Americans will control it. And again, brothers and sisters, you look at what has happened in all of Africa in particular, under the tutelage of the Americans and the French and the British. We've seen immorality grow. We've seen all type of things grow that's not right. Their leadership has not been leadership. It's been decisiveness, and it's promoted, again, corruption and so forth and so on. And these groups here has fueling the Fulani Jihad as we know it today, and others, the Tuareg and the Arabs as well. These types of groups here are fueling that to the point that no one has an answer for because it's too big. It's all the way across Africa. Some say it's 30 African states now, and it's growing. And membership is increasing in the advocacy groups and the Mujahideen groups. We've seen Fulani running to these groups, all because of these types of individuals here that fueled Fulani Jihad. In my last report, the ineptitude of the Fulani leadership has helped to fuel the hatred of our enemies. Again, this is when they make comments, ill-advised comments out of anger and so forth and so on. This is our enemies look at this and they use this as a rally cry against all of us. And our direction right now, we don't have a direction. Can anybody explain to me what's going on with MIYETTI ALLAH, Huri, except the name and some of the discussions and so forth they have? What direction are they going? How about the MACBAN? What direction are they going? None of us seem to really know. And our leadership, we don't know we don't know what is transpiring. You see what I mean? This is what I'm talking about. And we have to look at this for what it is. And we got problems, no doubt. It's imperative to put forth plans to quell the enemy groups and governments and their apparatuses by uniting the groups under one MIYETTI ALLAH banner. Brothers and sisters, this is the crux of it all. Electing leaders based upon the Sunnah. We have a group by the name MIYETTI ALLAH, period. Stretching across West Africa under one Amir. And orchestrating and having leaders govern according to the Quran and the Sunnah. Meaning our brothers across the Sahel, from Senegal, Mali, Guinea, the Gambia, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Togo, Nigeria, Niger, Burkina Faso, all of this, even stretching into the Cameroons. There should be one MIYETTI ALLAH, and we should have one Amir. I don't know where all this is funny. I had other notes here, and I don't see. This is very interesting. What happened to those notes? I don't know, but boy. Okay, yeah, and I don't know what happened here. Anyway, this leadership should be voted on by all of us in a sense of saying, not by the richest of us, those who are the righteous among us, who can give us the best direction. And then we should have an assured council also. The assured council will be advisor to that Mir of MIYETTI ALLAH. And we'll have one area, a base, where the central part of that and the money and dues that go into this will make us make our organization very strong and powerful, where the advocacy group doesn't have to kill. Because you have all of West Africa basically under you. And then all these advocacy groups have their own emirs in each, like in Senegal, but they answer to the emir of all of the groups. And we have a short council, which comprises, and I have a schematic showing this, and we need the ulama because it's them who are the experts in the Quran and Sunnah and how we govern. We need our historians to talk about how our brothers ruled in the past and how they governed in the past. We need that. We need all of that. We need our educators as well, how we can get education to the most remote Fulani who are living out in the Sahel and the Savannah and the Sahara. We need all of these types of bodies to help us. Educators, the ulama. We need security experts. We need all of this, and we should have dues that are paid into one central bank, and that money is used to promote the causes of the Fulani people and to protect the way of life of the Fulani people, whether it's a pastoralist or herder or the man who's in Futafula, he's a city dweller. We should have this type of protection. We would not have to have this if all the governments would protect us. There's no need for it, but because they don't protect us, who do we call? When the TIF come over in cars, okay, in vans loaded with machetes and swords, and they come to kill, nobody protects us. Even if we know we have reports and we go to police, we've heard them say this many times, make reports, say, hey, look, we told the police that these guys are coming. They don't show up until after an hour, 2 hours, maybe the next day after they did the killings. We would not have to talk about MIYETTI ALLAH if the governments and the security apparatus were fair and just. They're not. So human nature says that we need to have protection, and people will do it. I don't care what race you are. You look across the history, it doesn't matter what color you are. You have the same circumstances, people will form into groups to fight back. The Fulani are doing that. So it's not like it's something new. This has been going on in human nature. See? So that's something that we have to look at, and we have to be honest. The viable threat, to them and to many, we are a viable threat. And it's true, brothers and sisters, we are. And this jihad is smoldering. All of us wants peace. We all want to live our lives in peace. We want to live around, with people in general. We want to live in peace. Nobody wants to fight. But what are you supposed to do when you have the security apparatuses, the government, and the Tubab forces backing these groups like the ESN Nigeria and some other militias across Burkina Faso and Mali and against Niger? They're formed by Tuareg and Afro-Arabs and hypocrite Africans who kill us. See, who kill us. And so now we have this problem, and we have nobody to protect us. If you heard my report 3 months ago in Burkina Faso, I interviewed this one brother who was he's a herder, and they live in a very small community, and they were basically hacked to death. Okay, security forces came and hacked his people to death. Many of them escaped, and what they did, they came back to form a militia where they have a militia inside the Futafula region of this area, and then you had the pastoralists who have their cattle on the outside. So they have militias to protect that. And then when the public, the Western press got a hold of this, and the government became aware of this, then they started to call these people terrorists. Now, what happened when they were slaughtered? He told in an interview, he said, you guys killed 75 of my people, and you never came to investigate. See, so they formed militias. Now, when they form militias to protect themselves, is when they got involved to call them terrorists. And I saw the brother. He was on there. He's a modern Fulani. And, you know, he said, what am I supposed to do? I lost my wife and my children and my parents to marauders who came in and wiped them out. See, I talked about the ineptitude of Fulani leadership. I don't have to keep harping on that. We're all aware of that. We don't know what direction they're going. And I've said this before. When you have leadership and you get in front of the camera, we have to have the right leaders, not how wealthy you are. We have to have people who are picked according to the Quran and Sunnah, who have this in their heart and who champions subhanahu wa ta'ala, not democratic. No one of us should be following anybody who gets up there and promote democratic ways and means. It's over. And any Fulani who argue with me to tell me this is the best government, you know this from the Waqat al-Islam Ashra. There's 10 nullifiers of your Islam. One of them is calling for democracy over the Sharia law. You're out. Anyone who gets up there and start talking about democratic ways and means, you should not follow him. And any Fulani who gets up on TV or writes an article to tell that we should disband our brothers who are out in the pastures, who are nomads, who want to worship and out in the open, they just want to tend their cattle. They don't want to do anything to anybody. And they call for disbanding these people and having their cattle moved and all this. What kind of Fulani would say that? But we have that. We're starting to have articles, especially the last couple of years, where we have prominent, very wealthy Fulani who are ashamed of the pastoral history of the Fulani people. They're Fulani themselves. They said they don't identify with that. They said we should disband that. That's not right. But then on the same token, I'd be honest. We have pastoralists among us, or we have herders who are mad at many Fulani who left their herds and went to the city. They're mad at them too and said that they're traitors. Okay, they're turncoats because they went into the city. So we have both of that. But both of these elements have to be brought together and respected. See? It is imperative to put forth and quell the enemy groups and governments, their apparatus, by uniting the groups under one MIYETTI ALLAH. We have to, brothers and sisters. Now we at the point we have to have one voice, not two voices and three voices, and inept leadership. If we have a MIYETTI ALLAH group under one emir, stretching across from Senegal all the way across the Sahel, and then we have again another smaller emirs under him, and we have the security apparatus and so forth to protect the Fulani people from marauders and also from criminal Fulani bands. See, and we need this, and we can flourish, but there's others don't want to see it. Because why? Again, you heard me say in many episodes, it's the money, brothers and sisters. If the Fulani people begin to do things in such a way that would throw these hypocrites out of power, that money from the Americans and from the IMF and the World Bank and from the two governments of Europe will dry up, and their pocketbooks won't be fat anymore. It's a game of death, but it's a game of money as well. We must be honest here. West African Sahel is a dire need of Fulani leadership, the rightful leadership based upon the Quran and Sunnah, and revisiting how our ancestral leaders governed. Brothers and sisters, and you do your research. Let me tell you something. We've had some great leaders in all eras, and these brothers were fabulous, and they governed correctly. And we all have. You think this thing between the cattle herder, the farmer, and the herders is new? It's been going on for centuries upon centuries. But you didn't. When you read about it, you seen there were laws enacted. You heard me talk about the Messina group in particular. These laws lasted for hundreds of years, and it was working. Yes, you had some conflicts here and there when there was regime changes, or there was a little war in here. They had, here and there. Yes, they had some maybe some conflicts. But these things were restored again. So the farmers were allowed to grow their produce and the Fulani nomads who want to be nomadic life and who were selling their meat and cheese and milk was allowed to do that. All that went by the wayside when the Tuba came in with colonial power, the colonial playbook, and they installed weak African leaders. We've been in dire straits ever since. The farmer and herder conflicts that are raging all over Sahel, the rank and file Fulani must voice, that's wrong, their opinions and demand from our leadership rightful guidance with a united Fulani front. Again, united in the basis of what's rightful, not in criminality. We cannot support, yes, we understand, we cannot support any Fulani groups that to tend to go to criminal, meaning kidnapping, robbing for ransom, wanton murder, stealing. We cannot support that. We understand why our brothers is doing it, yes, but we cannot support that. And we should not support it. And we should have one voice against it. Those who go to join, we understand. Now, I'm not going to get too much right now into another segment about the Mujahideen, because you can't ask a Fulani brother, like this brother that I talked about who was in Burkina Faso, what happened to his whole village. They took out 75, and they didn't care who they killed. They killed women, even suckling babies. If you heard my report some months back, even the babies who were just born, they killed them, hacked them to death. They even got some of our sisters and threw them into a fire. That's how ruthless this was. The men who remained formed militias. Some joined the Mujahideen groups. I ask you, how can me or you tell him he's wrong? If he goes to Mujahideen groups, who's going to protect him? The police, the state police? No, it's them who are involved in this. This is why we have to be very careful. And sometimes when we malign, yes, it's easy for us to say, oh, I wouldn't do this and that. How would you know? If you're living in the outskirts in the savannah, okay, what are you going to do when marauders come? You have to ask that question. We'll go a long way. The criminal elements, if we have a united Fulani front under MIYETTI ALLAH, the criminal elements among us will be dwarfed, as well as our plots of our enemies and then the providing security. This, brothers and sisters, is a big, big issue. We have to have an advocacy group that speaks for all the Fulani. Not many advocacy groups, but we have one. Because this is how we governed in the past and why we remained so powerful in West Africa. Why we were in control of West Africa one way or the other since the 700s. Because we had strong leadership. That's why. And Subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us because we used his laws to manage. See, so these are issues, brothers and sisters, that that I'm bringing up today, and I want you to think about. And if you have comments, please write me. Make comments in the comment section and whatnot, and support my program as well. Subscribe and whatnot, because my reports are very unorthodox, meaning I don't follow the guideline, because I talk basically from the right of the Quran and the Sunnah, and when there's something wrong, even with me, or I have to talk. If something's wrong with our groups, I have to talk. If there's something right, yes. And when we should always defend justice. I don't care if our Fulani brothers go to hack up the Yoruba, who have nothing to do with what some had did to Fulani in another village. I'm against that, and I must talk for the justice of those who, the Yoruba brothers who were slaughtered, unjustly slaughtered. Okay, we cannot advocate for that as Muslims. We cannot. And just because 5 Yoruba killed some Fulani, we can't come back and say, okay, we go just kill any 5 Yoruba. We find them at the university, we go kill them, and we satisfy the revenge. The revenge, Subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, belongs to him. That's why revenge is so deadly and dangerous. It can send you to the hellfire, because you're acting out of hate, acting out of remorse, and you go and kill based upon that. You can't do it. But we have brothers doing that. Unfortunately, this is not what we should be doing. So I gave you the synopsis today, brothers and sisters, a long synopsis of the two groups. And, I like to know your opinion, inshallah, for those who appear in the future. Because I'm going to tell you right now, it's come a time now that we must, as the Futafula people, and our brothers and sisters, Africans too, because we're being hit hard. And we have to call for some organization that we have, where we have one umbrella organization and everybody joins in that. And we make sure that the leadership is correct. Not the richest among us, but the most righteous among us. And all of us should talk against and also go against the criminal elements among our community. Yes, we know the young brothers had their way of life. His father and mother was killed in the savannah. How many times we've heard this? They stole all his cattle. He's now 18 years old. He has no livelihood. The government doesn't protect him. The local police and the state police don't protect him. He has no education. Suddenly, one Mujahideen group comes, or suddenly a criminal organization comes and tells this young man who's grieving to join them. How many times have we heard this? How many times? When we have calamities like this, the Amir of the MIYETTI Allah gets involved. We will have a treasury where we have, because the Fulani people, as you heard me say 1,000 times, many times you can't look at some of the Fulani people. You see them in the Fulani hat, and you see them in just normal clothing. And I remember reading an article one day about some guy was laughing and giggling about the Fulani people who are out in the in the Sahel and so forth. It's very hot during the day and cold at night, especially summer months. We know how it is. It's like Morocco, very, very hot. He was talking about them. But somebody wrote in the comment section, said, do you know these people? They have a lot of money in the bank. It blew this guy away, because the Fulani people have money. They may not look it because they're out on the savannah, and you look at them, say, you look at them in clothing that, you say, these guys, and they are very wealthy. They don't show their wealth by having Mercedes-Benz and a big old house. They don't show their wealth that way, but they show their wealth by their cattle. See, and so there's a misunderstanding there. But I was trying to make that point to say that we should have one group under MIYETTI Allah, period, Amir, and then we have sub-amirs. We have ulama who advise. We have this assured council who advises the Amir. We have Amir in every West African state. He is responsible for the welfare of all of the Fulani in his particular area. We have a brother who's in charge of the Gambia. He's an advocate. When we have problems with the Fulani people there in the Gambia, they go to him. He in turn relays the problems to the Amir of all of us in the MIYETTI Allah. He has it. We have an assured council. We have a legal council. We have the ulama. We have all of this under that. We have a treasury where there's millions and millions of US dollars, for instance, sitting there. When Fulani people are harmed and they lose a home, the treasury will help to pay and to educate that man's children. We have this kind of money. This is how we should be organizing now, because this is what we have done in the Sahel for centuries, brothers and sisters. You go, I'm a historian. I am amazed at all of the scholarship, all of how we ruled. It's amazing. You should read on the history of the Fulani people. Look at the Messina group in particular. Look at Ousmane Den Fodio. Everybody talks about women's rights. Who was more champion of women's rights than Ousmane Den Fodio or Rahimahullah? Huh? How many? All they had centers for the sisters, where they can learn and they can relax. Education. They had all kinds. So where the woman can learn, she can learn, about her being a wife. She had education. She had many things so she can lead. Where is that today? Where is that today, brothers and sisters? Huh? How many women's centers we have today where we educating our sisters in the right what to do and what not to do? We get education today by YouTube and by the TV. They're looking at the African American women and the European women and how their nakedness and their lewdness, and this is what they're being trained under. But in the heyday time, we had our sisters who were educated because she's the first teacher in the home. See, this is what I'm talking about. That treasury would be monitored. We have the money, brothers and sisters. We have the money. We have the most wealthiest people in Africa are whom? The Arabs? No, it's the Fulani. The Fulani, we have more millionaires stretching across this place than anybody. And we have wealthy Fulani. I mean, wealthy. Just think that we organize a treasury, and when a brother is hit in Eastern Nigeria, say for instance, he's burned out. He applies to the Amir of the MIYETTI ALLAH. He turns the request over to the Ashur Council, into our legal council, into our ulama who issue fatwas. They in turn will look into the situation. We investigate, our security wing investigate, see that this brother was burnt out. We go and replace his home. Maybe he needs, I'm just saying, for instance, the U.S. money, because we have lira, we have different, different money, the names of it, and so forth. So I'm just talking about U.S. dollars. Maybe it takes 30,000 U.S. dollars to restore his car and his home. We do this under MIYETTI ALLAH because we have a treasury for that. We have zakat being paid. You say, Yahya, you're crazy. Why are you advocating this? What government bodies today is protecting us? None. How many government bodies are after us? All. How many government bodies claim today they are looking out for our welfare? None. Nobody. Huh? When we tell them we're being killed, they don't care. They don't do anything to protect us. Now we must look back and say how our brothers ruled. And I'm telling you now, we have the nucleus under MIYETTI ALLAH that we can do it. If we form the right group and we're rightfully guided by Subhanahu wa ta'ala, it can work. It's a form, if you look at it today, like the Jews in some ways, but ours will not be fashioned after the Jewish. Ours will be fashioned under the way our brothers have done it in the past under the Islamic banner. If you read in the Messina, how the Messina empires, how each one on and off, beautiful. They had municipalities, they had rulers, they had masjids all over the place. They had the ulama, they had treasury. When people were starving, the treasury would pay for the food. This is what we need. We have the money as Fulani people. We have it. When our brother who's sitting there and going across from Nigeria into Niger, the same band of criminals come and take all his cattle. Maybe he owned 500. He lost his wife. He lost his livelihood. Under MIYETTI ALLAH, we'll come to replace his cattle because we have the money to give this brother his rights and give him his cattle back. This is what we should do. Now the distractors, like the governments, will be hard pressed because we're not asking for violence. We're taking care of our own, and we're doing it legally. We're not doing anything under the radar. Everything is out and open. Okay, we're not doing anything. We're not advocating violence. We're not part of no terrorist groups. The criminal element among the Fulani, we're after them. We tell them to shape up, or we disavow them. See, but they can't call on us to go after them per se. We cannot. Even if they kidnap one of our own, what they're doing today, they're kidnapping men of our leadership. But we will have a security wing. But the security wing will be under the control of the Amir, and it's not. And the ulama will be looking to making sure that they are the reprisals or whatever they're doing, their Hezbollah police, that they will be operating under the Quran and the Sunnah and don't violate the constitution of that particular land where they're at. But that gets into another point. And brothers and sisters, we have to ask the question about this. Does any constitution in Africa, any constitution or government body or whatever in their laws supersede the Sharia law? No, they don't. Okay, no, they don't. I'm not saying that we should violate any law. I'm not trying to say that. But we have laws as Muslims. We have laws about things like this. Okay, I'm talking about doing things righteous and above board. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. When we have Fulani people who are hurt, who have been killed, their livelihood taken away, we will step up to protect them, give them money, and so forth and so on. Our educators will devise programs so we can educate. Most of our Fulani youths are not being educated today. We'll have advocacy groups who will be part of the government in that it protects our rights and protect us from the lies, okay, that we hear today. This is what we need. This is what I'm talking about under MIYETTI ALLAH. One advocacy group. We have a cultural minister as well who promote the Fulani culture to show how we are in language and so forth and so on. We have a sure council that will advise the emir, advise the prime minister of the country. They go there to advise them and so forth and so on. We have the ulama who would look at all of us to make sure that we're being rightfully guided under the Quran and Sunnah. And also train our leaders on how to speak and how to talk and how to promote Subhanahu wa Ta'ala's name. We need that. See, we need a security wing that these are our experts in security to provide security for our chosen leaders. And also for ours who ranging out in the savannah, all the way to the Futafula who are in the cities. We can do it. We have the money for that. So brothers and sisters, you heard my synopsis of this, okay? And I'm hoping that you ponder my words. Now, some will, my distractors, I already know the Tubab, they'll come and say, well, I'm advocating terrorism. I know that this everything that even when I talk about the interstellar space, they claim that was terrorism. It's funny. But I'm only talking about the Futafula people because they're being maligned. And we have to do something to help. I'm giving you my recommendations. I'm going to present, inshallah ta'ala, soon a chart so it'll give you a better picture of what I envision. Because MIYETTI ALLAH must be enacted in order to protect the Fulani people, the culture, and its interests. We have to have that because I told you, as I tell you now, the government is not going to protect you. The government is not going to fund you. The government is not going to give you the education, and it's not going to help you in your livelihood. They will not. They cannot. Not under the current format we have today. It's not going to work. See, so I'm only giving you an opinion, what I see it, because I'm an outsider looking in, and I'm only talking about how we can do things righteously as Fulani people and have an organization that speaks for us, that is doing things righteously, that forbids the wrong and promotes the good. Nobody can fault us for that. If we do this under the Quran and the Sunnah, where we're promoting, and Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says the good and we're forbidding the bad, nobody can claim that's terrorism. See, nobody can claim that's terrorism. So brothers and sisters, I'm about ready to close here. This is a weekday. I know people are working today, and those who show up in the future, if you like this type of talk, because again, it's unorthodox. I'll give you things that a lot of people do not talk about, but I'll give you in-depth analysis for you to think about. You agree, disagree, I understand that and whatnot, but I give you something from a point of view, from my side, the way I look at things, and I give it to you for your education and edification as well. And I hope that you like this, and those who review this, please subscribe and pass this information on to other Fulani people and other Africans as well who want to understand the Sahel, want to understand about the Fulani people. They come subscribe, and I give you the best I can. Talk about Islamic issues. I talk about those also. I will get back to some of those, inshallah ta'ala. But we've had a lot of different things that I need to talk about, and that's why I've been doing this. And promoting the African people in general, I've been doing this. And I want to continue to do this. And I ask you for your support, and you support me by subscribing. I'm not asking you for any money or anything like this. Just subscribe, subscribe to my program, and that's all I ask. Some of the programs you like, I understand. Others you may not like, but support your brother, because us as African people, we should be networking and we should be supporting one another. The Mexicans do it, the Chinese do it, the Japanese do it, the Arabs do it, the Jews do it, but the African people, we don't. That's funny, isn't it? Huh. Very funny, isn't it? We don't promote that, but everyone else do. They have networks. Where's our networks? Think about that. We're very, very, very lacking in that. Okay, my dear brothers and sisters, I will leave you with that. Assalamu alaikum. Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.